You ready? I don't remember her. Ready? Good. All right, good afternoon. This is Monday, December 1st, 2025. This is a special meeting for a board work session about personnel. Ask you to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think before we get moving, Mr. Hardesty, you wanted to say a couple things.
Yes, thank you, President Pauly. I just wanted to take a moment and share the thought process behind having this as a work session and our next work session, because they kind of go hand in hand. As we look at our personnel decisions that we may need to make in the spring for next year, what I wanted us to do is just take a look at that process. As you know, we went through this process last spring. It was a very difficult process that we went through for our county, and we're still working through some of those. So what I want to do is just take a moment and let the board members just reflect on that process through professional and service personnel. In our board work session in January, we will be looking at our comps for next year, which we should receive those before the next meeting, so we can actually talk about the real dollars behind what we'll be looking at in a budget for next year. And so with that, I just wanted to make sure that people know that, and that you all know that our goal is to not have a personnel season that's at the level that we did last year. But there is some adjustment that has to be made every year, because our students don't stay in the same grade year after year. And so the schools have needs that change. And this is a process we use to make sure that we address those. And so we have Ms. Scarberry with us this evening, who is brand new in her role. And I know she's prepared a lot for this. And then following her will be Mr. Tackett.
Good afternoon, President Pauly, board members, Superintendent Hardesty, and Ms. Hornbuckle-Myers. We are going to be presenting today just policy in regards to professional personnel and defining some of our words that you will hear throughout the process of personnel season. So for our first, you will find the presentation. You should have the presentation, but also I included policies that would be applicable. Not that we will go over completely those policies, but we will just be touching base on those. But you would be able to refer back to those if you had any questions. So when we're talking about transferring employees from one position to another, we're looking at West Virginia Code 18A 2-7, but we're also talking about Cabell County Policy 3130.01. This policy says that our district must notify in writing an employee who is being placed on transfer on or before April the 1st, and that they would be considered for a transfer. An employee can request a hearing upon being placed on or potential transfer, and that they will request that hearing in writing, and that hearing must be held on or before May 1st. During this time, reason must be shown at the hearing for why the employee would be on a transfer. During the meeting, we are required to provide a transfer list to the board with a subsequent assignment for the ensuing school year. When we're thinking about terminations, or what we would call the reduction in force, or we would refer to that as the RIF, we're looking at County Policy 3131 or 3131.01. Reduction in force means that as a district, a classroom teaching or other professional position are reduced for just cause. That just cause could be student enrollment, changes of programming. The RIF list are those employees who, after calculating staffing, determining reductions, any additions, and evaluating the transfers, would not have a contracted position for the ensuing school year. When we're thinking about our policy 3130, we're looking at employees, we're looking at seniority, we're looking at evaluations, we're looking at certifications and those qualifications that a teacher would have, or a professional personnel. Our non-renewal of contracts. According to code, we have two kinds of contracts. One is a probationary contract. But no more than 3 years that the teacher has a contract. Upon the completion of a third year and completing the teacher induction program and having a bachelor's, they can go to a continuing contract. We as a district have the right to not continue a probationary contract employee. However, we must follow the appropriate steps to make sure that we have addressed any concerns that we would have with the employee. A continuing contract after 3 years or after 1 year of successfully transferring from another county, our employees would go to a continuing contract. Any questions so far? Now I feel like I can breathe a little bit. So in a transfer, on our next slide, a transfer is a change of an employee's current work site or employment, often referenced as the employee bumping into another position or a work site. This action is taken by the school board to assign a regular employee to a different position for the next year. An employee is not allowed to transfer into a vacancy. In order for an employee to transfer into a position, they must be certified to be in that position. They would have to have more seniority than the previous person who held the position for which they would be transferring into. In a reduction in force, the action of having fewer employees overall in a particular certification area, or we have a lack of need, again, we talked about in the previous slide, reduction in student enrollment, would place these employees on the RIF list. We also refer to this as the preferred recall. So when someone is placed on the RIF list and they did not have any employment, we will place them on the preferred recall list. And we will need to look at this list to make sure that these employees have an opportunity to come back to us if they bid on a job that is posted and they are certified for that position. As we go through the process, we cannot consider others if someone is on the preferred recall list and they've bid on the job and they are certified. So they have to have all three, they have to have the trifecta of all three. So for our timeline, throughout the school year, the Professional Personnel Department is looking at the certifications. We are tracking and verifying professional positions, seniority, and certification of all our employees, while also identifying needs, enrollment, and staffing. Today, every principal received a list of the employees that are at their school to verify seniority and certification. So we've been working in our office all day today to make sure that we have the most accurate information if someone has added a certification, to make sure that our records are correct, as well as we have worked this last month to map out our entire district to make sure that we know where everyone is, their seniority dates, and things like that. In January, the executive directors will be submitting potential staffing changes and realigning positions based on enrollment, student need. At the high school, it would be course request, and also looking at what is our county budget and what is our projection of what we would like as a county as far as professional staff. Superintendent Hardesty, the deputy superintendents, Mr. Rotkin, and the legal will review the forms for preliminary changes. We'll begin analyzing the changes and the impact on the budget, but also we look at the instructional needs. Even with a proposed change, what is the instructional impact that we have on our students and our schools? We identify positions that are changed, and that will be finalized. Those positions are not by person's name. They're by a position, and we're looking at the position to say this position will be cut, not by a specific person's name, because we want to look at jobs, not in individual people. And the final list will be provided to me. At that time, it is my job to begin placing and looking at who is impacted. So in January and February, the personnel office will identify affected employees. generate letters for transfers, reduction in force, and potential non-renewal of contracts if there would be any. In March, we will deliver those letters in person. It is much better to deliver those letters in person and to have that human contact rather than having those mailed. And it also allows you an opportunity to answer any questions that an employee might have. The principals are with you when you do that as well. In April, on the next slide, okay. April, we have the deadline for employees to request a hearing. A specific date is dependent upon our time and calendar of when we would have our board meetings scheduled. All employees should be considered for possible change during personnel season, must receive their notice on or before April 1st. Board meetings and hearings, as they are requested, and again, we talked about this at the beginning, those requests must be given in writing. The names of the transfers, reduction in force, and non-renewals are placed on a board agenda. In April and May, all personnel action must be approved by the Board of Education on or before May 1st. And then we would have a large posting sometime the end of April or the 1st of May. Again, looking at those individuals who bid on those jobs based on certifications as we have in the past. As a personnel department, we would continue to monitor that preferred recall list. Still, we have a few left. I think there are 4 or 5 left from the preferred recall list from last year. So anytime we have a job posting, we are looking at that preferred recall list to make sure that if that person bid, that we aren't addressing that, that need. Any questions or concerns?
Mrs. Scarberry, you did very well, thank you. Board members, just a couple of things to remember on the professional personnel side. She talked about transfers, the reduction in force, and then the contract that we can, the probationary contracts that we can also look at. Transfers are generally in professional personnel based on seniority, and the reduction in force is based on qualifications. Now, our policy also defines what those qualifications are, and it really boils down to seniority at the end of the day because it looks at any employee that might have 2 consecutive negative evaluations, which is not a common thing, and then certification within that area. So, and again, I want to reiterate that Mrs. Scarberry said that we do not look through our process of planning, we do not look at employees, we look at positions. And so it takes January, the end of January, February, and honestly, early March, because her department has to pull files of all of our employees to verify their certifications, and those are not on a.
That's something that we've been doing as employees have questions to kind of verify those that are concerned about maybe there's an error and we want to make sure it's right.
And the other thing that I just wanted to point out, one of the things she talked about is that you can't transfer into a vacancy, and that's actually part of code that you're not allowed to do that. So you would think that hypothetically, if we had to eliminate 30 positions and we had 30 people retiring and it all lined up and it was the same certification areas, that would be really easy, that you wouldn't have to displace anyone. But the way state code requires us to do it is you have to move the 30 out of their current job and then post those retirees and let other people bid on them as well. And so that's that large posting she was talking about, because there's a law that any position we know of that's going to be vacant for next year, if we know about that before March 1st, we have to hold that for that large posting. So.
And we already have that list.
So it's a lot, and Ms. Scarberry, thank you for tackling it. Greatly appreciate that. So,
thank you.
But again, the goal here is to make sure that we're just looking at everything, making sure that the board understands the process we go through, and that our employees understand that it is a process. It's a difficult process on our families, on our schools' families. And we recognize that. And so our goal is to make that as as least impactful as possible as we go through this, because we are still recovering from last year, and we recognize that. So I think I'll stop right there. Mr.
Okay.
Tackett.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I want to let you know that one of my first meetings this morning was with Mr. Hardesty, who cut 60% of my presentation out from last year, which were the basics of what we do in our office, and have me focused on transfers and RIFs. So the PowerPoint presentation that I submitted last week, we're only going to look at your last 4 slides. You think you might have an updated version today that has also a 5th slide. Since he cut me down, I snuck one extra one in there anyway. So on the first slide,
Mr. Tackett, before you
Yes.
start, I thank you for recognizing that. But board members, what I was wanting to do is make sure we maintain focus on why we're here today. Mr. Tackett did provide quite a bit of information on the hiring process.
Thank you.
That the service personnel department goes through. And that might be something that we need to look at and review for a future meeting. But for this meeting, I wanted to make sure we focus on personnel season, how that impacts our district. Thank you, Mr. Tackett.
You're welcome. I'm trying to figure out how to work the clicker. Point there? Yeah, I don't think it's working. At any rate, if you look at your first slide, we have current numbers of our employees that are full-time and regular, as opposed to our substitutes. And if you had last year's presentation with you, you would see there's significant changes that we made, especially in the ECAT and AID areas. Okay, one thing that I realized once I learned a little bit about service personnel in RIF and transfers is there's never going to be a time that service personnel will be free from all transfers and RIFs. Even when a superintendent promises there's not going to be RIF and transfers, in service personnel we have 2 areas that it will still make sense to move people around, and that's in the area of ECATs and AIDS. A lot of times when a one-on-one special ed aide is with a student from kindergarten through 5th grade and they make that transition into middle school and they're there, we have to give those people either a 10-day letter or a transfer to move from one building to another. In the area of ECATs, elementary schools, kindergarten, and 1st grade populations wane, they come and go, they grow and they diminish, and sometimes we'll have to put an ECAT on transfer during enrollment projections for next year. And during February, the 2nd month enrollment report will be considered very heavily by those people, and so we're always going to have a very small amount, or in some cases, like a major policy change, a large amount of RIF and transfers and service personnel. We just can't avoid it. Okay, so if you look at the second slide, that's pretty much the first bullet. Every year it's necessary to move ECATs and AIDS due to enrollments, occasionally a couple of special ed aides. All right, so let's go to slide number 3. In order to have time to calculate what positions, not who, but what positions and classifications that we need to move around, things begin pretty early in the wintertime. In service personnel, there are 4 important dates to remember. One is April the 1st, one's May the 1st, the 3rd one is July 1st, and the 4th one is August the 1st. In April, we have to notify by April the 1st anybody that may be moved with a transfer or a contract terminated due to a lack of need. By May 1st, we have to have an opportunity for those people to ask the board for relief of those letters and transfers. So that's, all of that has to be done by May 1st. On July 1st, if a displaced person that has a RIF letter doesn't get rehired, we put them on what we call a preferred recall list on July 1st, which means their contract ended on June 30th, and that next day they have preferred recall status, which changes what group that we hire from. They become the second group if they're in classification. Also, if the reason for a RIF or transfer goes away by August the 1st, then we can rescind board action before May 1st and put that person right back in the job. So this being my 8th year, I have participated in 7 personnel seasons in service personnel. That August the 1st deadline has only happened about 3 times. It's very rare that all of the planets line up and we get a shot of putting a person back, but it's pretty rare. It's fun when it happens because nobody likes to move to a new school, and of course nobody likes to have their contract terminated. All right, so it's important that when we are giving RIF and transfer letters, that we consider a lot of variables. Not only the classification that an employee is currently in, let's say for an ECAD, but we have to consider any position that they have ever worked before. We have to consider their seniority when they were a special ed aide, or if they were a cook before they became a special ed aide, to see if their seniority would hold out for them to have a position in a different classification. So when service personnel are being reduced, it's important, and it's very convoluted, to figure out if they could have, by their seniority, a position in another class. So it's very important to consider all of those variables to make sure that the employees get the correct letter. Okay? All right, the next slide. And some of what I've already talked about is on that 4th slide. Okay, wonderful. Let's go to the last slide. Last season, personnel season, if you look at slide number 5, we started with 124 letters of disposition. We had 67 reduction in force letters and 57 transfers. That's a lot. That's a lot of letters. That's a lot of calculations. Those calculations couldn't be done accurately unless other departments work to give projections and lists and positions to consider at all 3 levels, high school, middle school, and elementary school. And I really want to say that, and I'm not looking for a promotion, so there's no reason for me to say anything that's not accurate about Mr. Hardesty. He has his hand on the pulse of this activity, on this transfer and risk, and asks lots of questions, has lots of knowledge, and even has me double-checking policy and people's seniority to make sure that I don't make a mistake that could harm the feelings and or position of one of our employees. He does a really good job, and I'll have to say, Mr. Boggs, he likes to make sure that he understands all of the timelines and that I'm following them just exactly as he has prescribed. So, with all of that activity of 124 people being displaced, we currently, as of today, have only one secretary, 2 cooks, and 4 aides without a contract. And the next posting that's going to go up on Wednesday, every one of these people have an opportunity to come back with a contract. All right, so are there any questions about this procedure that's going to start in just a few days? Okay, so I want to give a friendly observation. Many of you come to these meetings in and about this hallway. But I would like to invite you to come to my office and visit. And I'll show you a big magnet board that has all the positions. I'll answer any questions that you have. You're more than welcome to come and stop in and visit in the service personnel office.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
President Polly, I hope the overview at least made it understandable that the way state law is currently written, it's a very difficult procedure to figure out exactly who goes where when we have to make those changes. And we don't take that lightly. And we really put the effort into making sure we have identified the appropriate people that are in those positions. And I know it's very difficult for our employees to go through that. Being in that position myself for several years, it's been like that for a long time because I'm getting old. But going through it several times, I completely understand what it does, and I appreciate the work that they put into it. Both of those offices, not only that Mr. Tackett, Ms. Scarberry that we heard from here, but they have a great support within their office and their secretaries that work there. And they really want to make sure that our employees are taken care of. And so it's a difficult process. My hope is that it's nothing like we saw last year. I did see an article today that the state has lost about 6,000 students this past year. I think our total this year was 211 on our final comp. What Mr. Rockett and I are hopeful for is that prior to the next meeting, it's usually on or about the end of December, we should actually get what our budget should look like for next year, which will allow us to have a much more direct conversation at our workshop in January about what we would be looking for and some of the potential changes that we could see during personnel season. But part of this meeting was just to discuss the process, let you all know who's going to be taking care of those in each department if you have questions. And our employees can certainly reach out to them during this process. But again, I don't anticipate it being like anywhere like it was last year. At least I'm hopeful for that. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have as well.
I appreciate the presentation from Mr. Tackett and Ms. Scarberry, because I was here for the first part of, or the spring part of personnel season, but this was very informative to me, and I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.
I just want to say that I talked to Mr. Tackett more than I talked to Mrs. Scarberry, because I have 2 that are in service personnel. And people will call and ask if we're hiring. And there's never been a day that I haven't called him. If he's not there, he calls me right back. He does a good job at what he's doing. And I've told him 100 times how much I appreciate him. And I do, because I've never had a problem with the service personnel. So, thank you, Mr. Tackett. And congratulations on your new baby. He's got a Thanksgiving baby.
He hasn't stopped
And
smiling
Mrs.
since.
Scarberry, I love you just as much, but I just don't deal with you as much with the teachers and stuff. But you do a good job. You and Justin both. I didn't want to leave you out, Justin.
It is a very rigorous, detailed, spelled out in code. It's not a game, but it's like a game that you have to play to figure all this out. And in the time that I've been here, I feel like our county always does a great job of handling those situations and handling the notification of our employees in the best way possible personally, and we do a good job with that. And so I'm thankful that we do that. And I'm hopeful that maybe there can be work towards cleaning up the way we handle managing this situation for our employees. I mean, it has to be done by someone else, not us, but just to make it easier to more effectively manage our workforce as a county board of education. Because, you know, when you listen to some of this stuff, you can very easily see that it could be done maybe a lot more efficiently than what is currently spelled out in code. So I guess we just remain hopeful that maybe we could get some relief for how we have to handle these situations. And also, at the end of the day, you know, all the decisions that we make, I totally believe that we do the best we can for our employees, but at the end of the day, it's about what best meets the needs of our students. And so that's how we have to look at these situations, as difficult as they may be, and we've had some difficult ones. But we always have to look at what best meets the needs of our students. And so that helps us maintain a focus on what's the most important thing. All right. Well, do we have any workshop requests? Do we have any updates on current legal issues?
Before we move past the workshops, the workshop in January, if we could identify that date at our second meeting in December. I hesitate to use the first Monday because we may not have those numbers in from the state yet at that point, because I believe last year, the third or fourth that we received those, because we'll need to get those and actually put those in some kind of format that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would prefer to wait until later in the month if we could.
Yeah, and we have some other things on our calendar already, not on Mondays, but we do have a Monday holiday, so that'll.
Right, that would be the Monday before the second board meeting, so that would be out as well, but.
So we'll work on making sure we get that nailed down in a couple weeks. No update on current legal issues. We have a place for board member comments. I feel like we already made them out of order, but that's okay. And if nothing else, I'll just ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. We are adjourned at 4:05.